so we can use them during the discussion after the presentations. After you've heard Christian, you would say that the next speaker's, the title of his presentation is sort of strange, because I would like to introduce you to Mr. Peter Österberg. Mr. Österberg has a Ph.D. in psychology from the University of Lund in Sweden. He works especially with work and organizational psychology. He has a background with emotion and sports psychology and organizational development. And he is currently assigned to explore the future of agriculture from a perspective of entrepreneurial thinking. And he lectures on leadership, creative innovation, decision-making at the University of Helsinki. And we have chosen to give him the slightly provocative title, Why Do People Hate Agriculture? And I hope that he will disprove this title during his presentation. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you. Yes, why do people hate agriculture, or do they really? So, my name is Peter Österberg. As Christian said, I have a PhD in psychology. And on August 2018, I was assigned to lead a 3-year research project at the University of Helsinki. It has ended. Actually, I'm not there anymore. And the aim of the project was to explore the future of agriculture from a perspective of entrepreneurial thinking. And I stumbled into a world where stakeholders reiterated various claims about agriculture. I met farmers and leaders of co-ops who embraced the message. So what was the message, or what is the message, because it's the same message? Well, this paper came out actually at my very faculty of agriculture, saying humanity is facing the twin challenge of producing sufficient and nutritious food for a growing and increasingly affluent population while reducing the environmental impact of agriculture. Livestock in particular is a major environmental stressor, and she refers here to Motet, among others, as it produces an estimated 15% of global anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. Again, Motet. And here it comes, which is more than the whole transportation sector. Really? 1 year later, approximately, the faculty put this on Twitter. Now remember, the paper I showed you was about the challenging of producing cured meat. That's meat in a lab. Recent research about Hanna Toimisto, associate professor in sustainable food system, has shown that for some types of animal protein, culture meat is significantly better for the climate. Doesn't say that in the paper. A month later, Helsinki University hosted Nordic Nutrition Conference, and the conclusions from this conference will be guiding all the 5 Nordic countries' dietary guidelines. So what is said of this conference is hugely important. And one of the keynote speakers was this guy, Marcus Springman, and he says that our food system is neither healthy nor sustainable. Imbalanced diets, such as diets low in fruit and vegetables and high in processed meat, are the leading risk factor for mortality in the world and in most regions. So one passage struck me, and this was this one, further down. Agriculture production is a major driver of climate change. Really? This is the Swedish-speaking Finnish farm co-op, and this is one of the latest messages they put out on their social media platform, and it's in Swedish, so I translate the important part. Right now you can support small-scale farmers and with education and possibilities to adjust to the climate change. So here we go, a chain of events that pointing in a specific direction. So what they do is they beg for support and understanding. And after the summer, this was launched at the faculty Wiki Food Design Factory, and it aims at producing stuff that will compete with agriculture. It will laboratory stuff that we should eat. I checked the literature and I spoke with experts all over the world. I couldn't validate any of the claims. The conclusions led in the opposite direction. But why do certain stakeholders blame agriculture and farmers for changes in the climate? And why do farmers and leaders of co-ops internalize such a message? So I think the answer lies in our very brain or our very mind. And we fall victim of something called mental fallacies. So for the past million years, negativity bias has helped our species to survive, because when a lion attacked us on the savannah or our ancestors, we could escape. We didn't have to, we could reflect or have lunch or a conversation with a friend. But this is also a bias that influences our decision making. Conformity and groupthink, we want harmony in groups. We don't question people we know when they say crazy things. You know all that. Cognitive dissonance. When a girl from Sweden claims that the world is on the brink of doom, we ignore the fact that says that child poverty is on record low. Continued influence effect means that we embrace our favorite theories. And when I say we, I mean academic people. So we stick with the theories that has been with us. And Max Planck famously said something like, the academy evolve one funeral at a time. An availability bias, when we read crisis, 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 we believe it's true because it's mentioned so many times. And then we fall victim of confirmation bias. We search for information that confirm our conviction. And this one is important, tribalism. And this means that we don't meet with people who think different from ourselves. We fall victim of tribalism. And this is manifested actually among farmers who network to a lesser extent compared to people in a city, because we are social beings, we are social innovators. So when we look at this young man claiming that agriculture is a major driver of climate change, we believe him. Is there a solution? My conclusion point at what I call rational entrepreneurial thinking and improved market communication. A rational entrepreneurial thinking, I constructed a model inspired by Albert Einstein and Jacques Hadamard, and they had a conversation like 70 or 80 years ago. And the bottom line is that we should be suspicious if someone makes dramatic claims. If a girl from Sweden says that the world is on the brink of doom, could we ask for references? Numeracy, rely on basic numbers. Climate emissions from Sweden, 0.1% of global ditto. Climate emissions from Finland, 0.1% of global emissions. Climate emissions from Denmark, 0.1% of global. Okay, not much. Disjunctive reasoning takes many alternatives into account. So we check, what is climate? So climate is a complex phenomenon where gases move in a cyclic fashion between 5 spheres. It's the atmosphere, it's the biosphere, it's the cryosphere, it's the hydrosphere, it's the lithosphere. Do you know anything about that? Probably not. Since the Cambrian explosion, 540 million years ago, there has been 100 significant climate changes. 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula in what is now Mexico. opened the door for mammals. The current climate change is mainly explained by transportation, energy production, and industries. These are the commonalities, yeah. Agriculture, GHG from agriculture in Western Hemisphere, about 10%. Could that be a major driver? Biogenic carbon cycle and hydroxyl oxidation. Have you heard about that? Today, agriculture is feeding the world. And dairy is a climate-smart and nutrient-dense product that helps us fight child poverty. So look at this. The biogenic carbon cycle means that when cows are burping methane, it transforms into carbon dioxide within 10 to 12 years. Approximately the same amount of CO2 is consumed by a very familiar process called photosynthesis. We learned in 7th grade or something. It's a balance. And last year, this paper came out showing that if all Americans stopped consuming dairy, if we stopped producing dairy, greenhouse gases would decrease by 0.7%. But we miss all the nutrients. So we need 30 micronutrients to sustain physical and mental health. Food-like products like beyond, that is beyond impossible or squeezed out of oat, do not fulfill those needs. Meat, eggs, dairy, oat, vegetables, if served together, do that. And remember Walter Willet? 2 servings of whole milk a day. And this is also recommended by other nutrition experts. Conclusions. Farmers, especially in the Western world, produce climate-smart, safe, and nutrition-dense food. But the customers, who mainly live in a city, have no knowledge about the above. Farmers need to change their market communication, stop begging for support and help, start promoting the products. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Peter. I think this must produce some questions. But
I hope, yeah, but we save them.
It must also produce maybe some optimism and some better self-confidence in our dairy community. And I think that is a very good bridge over to our next speaker, Anne-Catherine Dalk, who comes from Belgium, from Wallonia, and she works on a family farm which produces milk, meat, and cereals. She's a bioengineer, and she holds a Ph.D. in agricultural sciences. She has traveled widely in both Europe and in Canada, and she has studied the diversity of farming practices. She is now within the Federation of the Young Agriculturers in Europe, SEJA, I think it's called, and she's the vice president of the board there. The reason why she's here is that she is to bring us into the future. She represents the next generation, and I certainly hope that the next generation will have lots of self-confidence and a lot of positive vibes to bring to us. The floor is yours, Anne-Catherine.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. So I'm really happy to be there to present to us our high expectation in agricultural policies. So as Kirsten present me, I'm Anne-Catherine, bioengineer. I got the opportunity to do a PhD, and now is the time to take over my farm, face to all the challenge, and thanks to my skills, I hope I will do this, because we have a lot of challenge, me and all my colleagues of Europe. And I'm the proud representative of all these young farmers of Europe, as vice president of the European Council of Young Farmers, SEJA. So, as you can see, I really love my farm. And you need to feed yourself to live. So you need me. You need all the young farmers of Europe. So how we can do so? How can I feed you at long term in Europe? we must become sustainable. And I'm happy because Dr. Hem explained that before. It's not an easy situation at this time. I don't want to complain myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to make profit, and yes, but I must say it's really difficult. There is the climate change, and there is also a lot of difficult economic constraints to face it. So we have a lot of expectation in agricultural policies to become sustainable. So I'm going to present them thanks to the three parts of sustainability, and we are going to begin with first one.